We're here today with Patricia Friedberg talking about her book, Letters from Wankie. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Patricia.
Thank you for asking me to join you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and about your book.
Well, I'm a writer. I was born in England, went through the Second World War as a child, married very young to a South African doctor, and that is how we landed up in Africa, back in Africa for him. And in this small town, which I can't even call a town, it was a place called Wankie. Today, that country, and that was when it was in southern Rhodesia. That country is now called Zimbabwe.
Okay.
He was a doctor there and was very busy with the native population. And I really had nothing to do because we were living in two mud huts joined together, and a number of servants who did everything for us. And I took a walk one day, and somebody stopped in a Jeep and said to me, "Can you type?" And I said, "Yeah, I can type." Yes. He said, "Well, there's a job for you at the Native Commissioner's office. Come on Monday morning." So I did. I mean, I just went there, and I was all of 20 years old. And he said, the job is clerk of the court, of the native court. And it was called Wangie then. No, it's called Wangie now. It was called Wankie then. And I became the clerk of the court of this Native Commissioner's office, which was part of the British Colonial Service. And I've learned everything I've ever known, the facts of life, the way other people live. I mean, most colonials who live in these countries know nothing about the native population. I knew more about the native population than I did of the European population. And it was the most outstanding and unusual and beneficial opportunity for me, who always wanted to be a writer and did become a writer, but this was always at the back of my mind. So when my mother died and I went back to London to be to first for her funeral, of course, and then to clear out the home, I found every letter that I had written to my family from Wankie in bundles, and I think there were about 300 or 400, maybe 500 letters.
Wow.
And my agent happened to be with me at the time, and she looked over a couple of them. She said, "You know, you excuse me, you have a book there." And I said, "I do." She said, "Yes, we're taking them all back to the States and we're going to go through them." And that's how this book came about. And when I started reading it, I didn't read it as being me, this person in the book, but being the clerk of the court of that particular area. And in a way, it's a historical novel. Not many people had the opportunity that I had. And I went ahead, and although it's not taken completely from the letters brought back memories of what I had done, where I had been all those years ago, in a place which was 50 miles from the Victoria Falls, and just in the middle of nowhere, and more native than European. It was a mining town. The only people who were white there, or European as they were called, were part of the mining corporation. We were not. We were part of the British government. So that's really the background.
Sorry, how long did you guys live there, or how long of a time?
We lived there for 2 years.
Okay.
I left a little earlier because it also happened to be one of the hottest places in Africa.
Okay.
In fact, once when I when I went to see what the temperature was, the actual thermometer had gone through the top of it. So they never allowed the Wankie temperature to be published anywhere because nobody would have gone there. So, of course, there was no air conditioning, there was nothing. So we had fans. Yes, I was there for 2 years, then went back to Johannesburg, then back to England, and then a few years later we came back and lived in Rhodesia, where my children were born. Although I have 4 children born in 4 different countries. My eldest son was born in Rhodesia, and actually I'm in his home right now speaking on on his computer. So it sort of got come full circle now.
Yeah. So have you traveled back since you left? Have you been back to visit the area that you guys?
Yes, I've written a number of books. One of them is still and a movie. It was called Journey for the Jacarandas. And we did a movie there in 1997 to 2000. But because the country was falling to pieces and the banks all closed on us, we could not continue with the movie. It's half done. One day maybe we'll finish it. But the story of Zimbabwe and Rhodesia is not a story that many people know about.
Yeah.
And I think in this book it will show you that the colonial service did some rather wonderful things for the native people. And I got to know something I would never have known, and most Europeans in Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, can possibly know unless they had had this job that I had as clerk of the court. And in my will, I'm going to put these letters into the archives in England, because in London, because it is the history and the background of a country that has now fallen to pieces because the Europeans, there's very few people left there who are European. And I must say that every time I've gone back, and I've gone back a few times, the African will say to me, "Why did you leave? Look at us now." So that's another political side of the story, which we can't go into now, but it happens to be true.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like your letters, it's a political treasure. The book is just insight into your life, and anything else you kind of shared about the journey and the inspiration. Anything else you want to share with us and our audience about you or about your book?
Yeah, well, the inspiration did come from the book, from the letters. I think I would probably not have written it because, you know, when you're 20 years old, your whole life is ahead of you and you've done a lot more than just write letters home. But these letters were so full of what I was doing. And when my agent started reading them, and she's an American, and she said, "Well, I've never seen anything like this before." So, I mean, it's if you read the book, it's not written like letters. It's written because of the letters and the stories within those letters. And everybody that I know who've read it have said that they've not read anything like it before. And that's why it's come out in a second edition. And we are in the throes of trying to make it an audible book too. But it must be written, it must be read by somebody with a British accent. It can't be read by somebody with an American accent.
Yeah.
So maybe I can do it, or somebody will do it who will understand the background and and what was going on at that time. And I have to say one other thing is that although all colonials are looked upon as the worst people on the earth, the colonials that I worked with worked so hard with the native tribal people, as whether it was to do with the animals, whether it was to do with bringing water from the river to the home instead of going with a bucket and going to get it, or whether I mean, there was so much that they did, the young men from England who were in the colonial service, who are very often the black sheep of the family and sent out to do something worthwhile, you know. They were great. They were absolutely great with the Native Commissioner, people, and the British South African police that worked with us, the BSAP they were called. They worked so hard to help the native people, not to become like Europeans, but to make their lives easier and more comfortable than they have ever been.
Yeah.
We did not change them. We just helped them.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking time to share with us today. You can grab a copy of Patricia's book online. It's available through Amazon, through Barnes and Noble. She mentioned she's working to get it into the audiobook version as well. It is available on Kindle if you prefer to read in that format on that device. So get out there, grab a copy of her book. Very interesting, very insightful, and a lot of information, historical information in there. Thank you so much for sharing with us this morning.
Thank you, Scott, for asking me. Thank you.